Rain fell hard on the broken streets, each drop hitting the cracked stone like tiny nails. The colony was once a place of trade and laughter, but now it looked tired, its buildings covered in rust and dirt. Neon lights flickered weakly, trying to stay alive against the heavy night. People rushed past, coats pulled tight, faces hidden, eyes set on their own problems. No one looked down at the small figure sitting near the alley. She was young, but life had already stolen her youth. Her clothes were torn, her skin pale, her hair wet and tangled. She held her knees close to her chest, shivering as the rain poured. She had nothing left, no food, no family, no home. The world had taken everything from her and left her with only the shadows. The people walking by did not stop. Some saw her but quickly looked away. Some did not see her at all. To them, she was just another beggar, another forgotten soul. But her eyes told a different story. They were not empty like the others on the streets. They still carried fear, pain, and something deeper. Hope, a very small hope that refused to die. She whispered to herself, words only the rain could hear. She begged the night for warmth, for a little kindness. Her stomach growled, and her thin fingers rubbed together for heat. The sound of footsteps echoed near her louder than the rest, slow and steady. Someone was walking without rushing. The girl lifted her head. Her heart beat faster. She was used to danger, used to cruel hands and sharp voices. She pressed herself deeper into the corner, ready to run if needed. Then she saw him, a man, tall, wrapped in a dark coat. His boots splashed water as he walked. He was human. She knew by his strong frame, his rough face, and the look in his eyes. He stopped in front of her. His shadow covered her broken body. For a moment, silence ruled between them. Only the rain spoke. The girl lowered her gaze, thinking he would pass like all the others. But he did not move. He stayed. His eyes studied her with something strange. Concern? Are you alone? He asked. His voice was low but warm. The girl did not answer. Her lips were dry. She had been asked many questions before, but those questions always came before pain. She did not trust words anymore. The man sighed and crouched down. He was close now. Close enough that she could see the lines on his face, the tiredness in his eyes. Yet there was no cruelty there. He did not look at her like she was dirt. He looked at her as if she mattered. Her body shook harder, not from the rain, but from fear and confusion. She whispered, I have nothing. Her voice cracked. Her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. The man slowly removed his coat, heavy and warm. He held it for a moment, then placed it gently over her shoulders. She gasped, gripping the cloth with her thin hands. It was the first warmth she had felt in many days. You don't need anything, he said softly. Just stay warm. The girl stared at him, not believing. Why would a stranger stop for her, give her his coat, care if she froze or not? In her world, kindness was a forgotten word. She searched his face for a trap, for a hidden reason, but found none. Her tears finally fell, rolling down her cheeks and mixing with the rain. She hid her face behind the coat, trembling. The human stayed quiet, not forcing her to speak, not asking for anything. The crowd kept moving, people still rushing past. To them it was nothing, just a man wasting time on a beggar. But to the girl it was everything. For the first time someone had stopped. Someone had seen her. The night grew colder. The man stood and looked around. His jaw tightened. He seemed to be thinking. His eyes returned to her. She looked so fragile, so small, like a candle about to die in the storm. Finally he spoke again. Come with me. Her heart jumped. Fear battled inside her chest. She had followed before, and it always led to pain. But something was different here. His tone was not a command, it was an offer. She hesitated, gripping the coat tightly. Her body screamed at her to stay hidden, but her heart whispered that maybe, just maybe, she had been found. The man stretched out his hand toward her, waiting, not pushing. His eyes told her what his words could not. You are not alone anymore, And in that moment, sitting in the shadows, the girl realized her life was about to change forever. She had been left with nothing, but this human's hand, this human's warmth might be the beginning of something she thought she would never have again. Hope. The night did not grow kinder. The rain kept falling, sharp and cold. The colony streets were nearly empty now, only a few drunks stumbling home or guards patrolling. The young alien girl sat still, wrapped tightly in the heavy coat the human had given her. She felt its warmth sinking into her skin, chasing away the chill that had lived inside her bones. For days, maybe even weeks. The man stood beside her, silent. He did not rush her, did not drag her to her feet. He simply waited. The girl kept her eyes on the ground, afraid to look at him for too long. Every time she had trusted before, it ended in chains, in bruises, in nights without safety. She could not believe this would be different still. She clutched the coat tighter. Her body trembled, but not just from cold anymore, it trembled from something new. Confusion. "Come," the man said at last. His voice was not loud, but it carried strength. It was not a command, but an invitation. He took a step away, then looked back at her, waiting. The girl's breath came fast. Her heart argued with her mind. Her mind said no, do not follow, it will end like all the others. But her heart whispered, maybe this time is not the same. Maybe this time is real. She stood slowly, legs weak. Her bare feet splashed in the water as she stepped forward. Each step felt like it might be her last, yet she followed him. Her hands gripped the coat, holding it to her chest like it was life itself. The man walked through the streets, taking turns down quieter paths, his pace steady, never too fast, as if he knew she would struggle to keep up. She followed close, her eyes darting around, afraid of being seen, afraid someone would drag her back. They reached a small house at the edge of the colony. The windows were dim, the door old. The place looked forgotten by most, but inside a faint light glowed. The man unlocked the door and pushed it open. He glanced back at her, waiting once more. She hesitated at the threshold. Rain dripped from her hair. Her eyes studied the doorway, like it was a trap, yet something inside told her to take one more step. She did. Warmth greeted her immediately. The smell of wood smoke filled the air. A fire burned in a stone hearth. Its glow painted the small room in soft orange light. There was a table, 2 chairs, and a simple bed pushed against the wall. The house was poor, but it felt safe. The man closed the door behind them. He hung his wet coat on a hook, then motioned toward the fire. "Sit," he said simply. She moved slowly, like a frightened animal, and sat near the fire. Her hands stretched toward the flames without thinking. The heat touched her skin, and for the first time in so long, she felt alive. Her body relaxed, just a little. The man disappeared into a small corner room. The sound of clattering dishes came. Then he returned with a bowl in his hands. Steam rose from it, carrying the smell of broth. Her stomach twisted painfully at the scent. She'd not eaten a real meal in days. She could not remember when food had last touched her tongue. The man knelt and set the bowl in front of her. "Eat," he said. Her fingers shook as she picked it up. She looked at him again, unsure. Was this kindness real, or would it cost her something later? But the hunger was too strong. She took one sip, then another. The warmth spread through her chest. Her eyes watered, not just from heat, but from relief. The man watched silently. He did not smile. He did not move closer. He only made sure she had food and warmth. The girl ate every drop, then set the bowl down with shaking hands. She wiped her mouth quickly, embarrassed. Her voice broke the silence. Soft. Why help me?" The man did not answer right away. He leaned back, resting against the chair. His eyes stared into the fire. His jaw moved slightly, as if he fought with words. Finally, he said, "Because no one else will." The words struck her like a stone, simple yet powerful. He was right. No one had stopped for her. No one had cared. Only him. Tears filled her eyes again. She lowered her head, afraid to cry in front of him. She whispered, "I can't. I have nothing to give you." The man turned to her, his voice calm. "You don't need to give me anything." She froze. Those words felt impossible. In her life, nothing came free. Every piece of bread, every place to sleep, every small kindness had a price, usually her pain, her body, or her freedom. But here was this human, saying she owed him nothing. Her chest ached. She pressed the coat tighter, her tears falling onto the cloth. She felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. The fire crackled, filling the silence. The girl leaned closer to it, closing her eyes. Her body finally let go of its constant tension. She was safe, even if only for tonight. She drifted into sleep without meaning to, curled up like a child by the warmth of the fire. The man watched her for a long moment, his eyes serious, thoughtful. He saw her scars when she shifted, faint glowing lines across her skin. He said nothing, but his hand clenched at his side. Whoever had left those marks would never have her again. Not if he could help it. And in that small, quiet house, on a stormy night, 2 lives began to change. Forever she was left with nothing. But now, wrapped in warmth and silence, she had been given the first fragile piece of something new. The night grew quiet inside the little house. Outside, the rain still hammered against the roof, but in the single room, only the fire spoke, crackling softly. The alien girl slept curled near the warmth, her thin body wrapped in the human's coat. Her breathing was uneven at first, like she expected to be shaken awake, but slowly it became softer, calmer. The human sat in the wooden chair, his eyes fixed on her. He did not know her name, did not know her story, yet something about her made him feel heavy in his chest. She looked too fragile, too broken, like one wrong touch would shatter her completely. He leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. His mind whispered questions he could not yet ask. For hours, he stayed awake, listening to the storm. His house was always quiet, too quiet. It was the kind of silence that reminded him he was alone. He had grown used to it over the years, but tonight, the silence felt different. Tonight it was not empty. It was shared. The girl stirred in her sleep, a soft sound escaping her lips. The human rose slowly and moved closer. He saw her face tighten. Her hands gripped the edge of the coat. She was dreaming. No. She was remembering. Her body twisted as if she was trying to escape invisible chains. "No. Please," she whispered in her sleep. Her voice was broken, filled with fear. The human's jaw clenched. His hands itched to reach out, but he stopped himself. She needed rest, not another hand pulling at her, so he only whispered, "You're safe here." His words were soft, almost like a prayer. She calmed slowly, the tension leaving her body bit by bit. He stayed close until her breathing steadied again. Only then did he return to the chair. The firelight caught the lines of his face, showing, not anger but quiet sorrow. The hours passed and dawn's pale light touched the edges of the window. The storm had eased and a weak sun rose. The girl woke suddenly, her eyes wide as if she had forgotten where she was. She sat up quickly, the coat falling from her shoulders. Her chest rose and fell fast. Her gaze darted around. Then she saw the human still sitting by the fire. His eyes were half closed, but he was awake. He raised his head slowly and spoke. "You're safe." Her lips parted. No sound came at first. She touched the coat, still warm around her. She whispered, "Why am I here?" "Because you needed a place," he answered simply. He stood and walked to the corner where he kept a small pot. He poured water into a cup and set it near her. "Drink." She reached out with shaking fingers, lifted the cup and drank greedily. Water ran down her chin. She wiped it with the back of her hand, embarrassed. Silence stretched again. But it was not the cold silence she had known on the streets. This silence was gentler, filled with things unsaid. She looked at him, studying his face. His expression was calm but unreadable. He did not demand her name, did not ask her to explain. Her eyes dropped. She whispered, "I can leave if you want." Her voice was small. She expected rejection. It was what always came after. The man shook his head. "You're not ready to go back out there." He glanced toward the door, his jaw tight. "And I don't think they'd stop searching yet." Her blood turned cold at his words. Fear returned to her face. They are looking for me," she admitted. Her fingers pulled at the edges of the coat, trying to hide inside it. The man said nothing for a moment. He only stared into the fire. His silence told her he already knew. He had seen the marks when she slept. The faint glowing scars across her skin. They were not the scars of accidents. They were the marks of chains, of punishment, of ownership. She trembled, waiting for him to ask, waiting for him to tell her to leave. But he did not. Instead, he spoke quietly. "You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to." Her eyes widened. No one had ever said that to her before. She always had to explain herself, always had to beg. But here, he asked for nothing. Her throat tightened. She pressed her forehead against her knees. Her voice broke as she whispered, "They hurt me." Tears burned her eyes. "They took everything." The human stood again, restless now, his hands curled into fists. He wanted to promise her safety, but promises meant little in a world like this. "Still," he said, "they won't take you again." His tone was steady, but his heart was racing. The girl looked at him, her eyes wet, searching. She wanted to believe, but she had learned to trust nothing. Her lips trembled. She whispered, "You don't know them." He crouched down in front of her, meeting her eyes. His voice was firm. "I don't need to know them. I know you deserve better." Her tears spilled. She hid her face again, but her shoulders shook with quiet sobs. She had been left with nothing. No family, no safety, no name worth speaking. Yet here, in this silent house, a stranger gave her what she had begged for her whole life. Not money, not power, just kindness. The fire cracked. The storm outside was gone, but inside the little house, something had begun, a fragile bond forming in the silence, and though she did not know it yet, that silence would protect her louder than any promise. The fire had burned low by the time the day grew brighter. Ash and faint embers glowed in the hearth, painting the room in dull red light. The human placed another log on the fire. The crackle, filling the silence, he glanced at the girl, still wrapped in his coat, her small figure resting on the chair now. She had eaten a little more, drunk water, but she was still weak, still trembling, as if the cold of her past clung to her skin. She shifted, pulling the coat tighter. Her head bowed, her hair fell forward, hiding her face, but when she moved, the fabric slipped. For a second, the human caught sight of her back beneath the thin shirt she wore under the coat. His eyes froze, glowing. Lines, faint but sharp, cut across her skin. They ran down her shoulders and across her spine. They looked like burns but brighter, like something carved deep and forced to heal wrong. His chest tightened as he stared. He had seen wounds before. He had fought wars, carried scars of his own, but these were not natural. They were marks of cruelty. The girl noticed his eyes. She gasped and quickly pulled the coat tighter. Her whole body shrank as if she wanted to vanish. Her breathing came fast. She whispered, "Don't look. Please don't." The human looked away at once, turning his gaze to the fire. His voice was low, steady. "I'm sorry." He did not move closer, did not demand she show him more, but the image of those scars burned in his mind. The girl hugged her knees, her hands shaking. "They did this," she whispered. "They said it would remind me who I was." Her voice broke. "A thing, not a person." The man's jaw tightened, his hands curled into fists. He wanted to rage, to shout, but he stayed quiet. His silence carried weight. It told her he was listening, not judging. She swallowed hard, her voice trembling as she continued. "Every time I tried to run, They burned another mark. They said, my body belonged to them. They said no one would ever see me as more than property. Her eyes filled with tears, and I believed them. I thought I was nothing. Her words cut deep into the room. The fire popped, but neither moved. The human lifted his eyes slowly, his expression unreadable, but his voice calm. You are not nothing. She shook her head quickly. You don't understand. If they find me, they'll take me back. They'll mark me again. Or worse. She pressed her forehead against her arms, her body shaking with fear. The human leaned forward in his chair. His voice carried strength now. They won't find you, not while you're here. Her head lifted slightly, her eyes shining with tears. Why? She whispered. Why would you risk anything for me? You don't even know my name. The man stared at the fire for a moment, then turned to her. His words came slowly, but each one heavy. Because I know what it feels like to be treated as less than human. His voice was rough, like old wounds stirred. I know what it's like to carry scars you didn't choose. The girl's breath caught. She studied him, as if seeing more than just a stranger now. She saw the lines on his face, the shadow, in his eyes scars hidden beneath his clothes. He was not just helping out of pity. He understood in his own way. Silence filled the house again, but it was no longer the silence of fear. It was heavy with unspoken truths. The girl wiped her. Tears quickly embarrassed, she whispered, I don't even remember who I was before. They took my name, they called me by numbers, that's all I had left. The human's eyes softened. Then choose a name for yourself now, he said. His voice was firm, but kind. You don't need. They're chains to tell you who you are. She froze, the thought strange, foreign. She had never imagined she could pick her own name. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Her mind spun with the idea, a name that was hers alone. The man stood slowly and moved to the window. His eyes scanned the street outside, shadows shifting in the light. He knew the silence could not last. He knew others would come looking, but when he turned back, he saw her still clutching his coat, her face lit by the fire's glow, and he knew one thing clearly. He would not let anyone lay another mark on her skin. The girl whispered, her voice trembling but firm for the first time. If they find me, I'll fight. I won't go back. The man nodded once, his voice steady. Good, but you won't fight alone. She stared at him, eyes wide. Her heart pounded. She had always been alone, always had to protect herself. But here was someone, saying she wouldn't have to. The thought scared her, but it also filled her with something new. Strength. And in that small house, hidden from the world, the secret of her scars was no longer just a story of pain. It became the start of something else. Resistance, hope, and the bond of two souls, scarred by life, but refusing to break. The morning. Air was heavy. The storm had passed, but the streets outside still smelled of wet metal and broken stone. Inside the small house, the fire burned quietly. The alien girl sat near it, clutching the coat close. Her eyes had softened in the safety of the night, but deep inside, fear had never truly left. The human moved about the room, setting simple tools on the table, preparing bread and water. He moved with quiet focus, yet every time his eyes shifted to the door, there was a shadow in his gaze. He knew safety was fragile. He knew peace could be broken at any moment. The girl tried to relax, tried to believe. His words from last night. You won't fight alone. But her heart still carried the sound of cruel voices, the burn of chains, the memory of being dragged back. Her scars glowed faintly as if remembering too. Then came the knock. It was sharp, heavy, not the knock of a neighbor. It was the knock of men who came with purpose. The girl froze instantly, her body curled into itself, her eyes wide with terror. The bowl of bread in her lap shook, pieces falling to the floor. The human's jaw tightened, his body went still. He turned toward the door but did not open it yet. He glanced back at her, seeing the fear in her eyes. Stay quiet, he whispered. The knocking came again, louder. followed by a voice deep and commanding, "Open up, colony inspection." The girl pressed her hands over her mouth to keep from making a sound. Her body shook as she slid closer to the fire, trying to hide behind the chair. Her mind screamed, "They found me." The human walked slowly to the door, his steps steady. He pulled it open and the cold air rushed in. 3 men stood outside, their uniforms dark, their eyes sharp. They carried the authority of enforcers. Their boots were wet, their weapons heavy at their sides. One of them stepped forward, his voice rough. "We're searching for a runaway female, young, alien, marked." His eyes narrowed as he studied the human. "Seen anyone suspicious?" The human's face stayed calm, unreadable. He leaned against the doorframe, blocking their view inside. His voice was slow, even. "No one like that around here." The girl's heart pounded so hard she thought the men might hear it through the walls. She pressed herself against the floor, her hands gripping the wood. She prayed the coat would hide her glowing scars, prayed the firelight would not betray her. The enforcer's eyes moved past the human, trying to see inside. "Mind if we look?" he asked, though it was not really a question. His hand rested on the handle of his weapon. The human's jaw tightened, his voice lowered, firm. "I mind." The 3 men exchanged glances. One smirked. "You hiding something, stranger?" The human didn't move. His eyes locked on theirs, cold and steady. He was not a man used to bending. His silence was dangerous, and the enforcers felt it. They shifted, unsure if this poor-looking human was worth pushing. Finally, the leader spat. "On the ground, fine, but if we hear anything, we'll be back." He pointed a finger close to the human's chest. "And if you're lying, you'll regret it." The human did not flinch. He only closed the door once they left. His hand lingered on the wood for a moment. He stood still, listening to their footsteps fade. His chest rose and fell slowly. Behind him, the girl finally breathed. Her body shook with silent sobs. Her fear poured out of her in trembling gasps. She whispered, "They know. They'll come back. They always come back." The human turned, his eyes softened. He walked to her and knelt beside her. His hand hovered for a moment before resting gently on her shoulder. "They didn't see you," he said firmly. "And I won't let them." She looked up at him, her face pale, tears running down her cheeks. "You don't understand. They don't stop. They'll tear apart every street, every home until they find me." Her voice cracked. "I can't go back. I'd rather die than go back." The human's jaw clenched. His voice lowered, almost like a growl. "Then you won't go back." The girl blinked, her lips trembling. "But you—" "They'll hurt you too if they know." He shook his head slowly. "Let them try." His eyes burned with a fire she had never seen before, a fire that made her believe him even when her fear told her not to. For the first time, she felt the weight of his choice. He was not helping her by accident. He was not being kind out of pity. He was standing against something larger, risking himself for someone who had been thrown away. She whispered, almost in disbelief, Why risk everything for me?" The man's voice was steady, almost gentle now, "Because no one should be hunted like an animal, because no one should be left with nothing." Her tears fell again, but this time they carried not just fear, but something else. Gratitude, fragile but real. She lowered her head, her body still trembling, but her heart felt a spark of strength. Outside, the sound of boots echoed faintly in the distance, a reminder that danger had not passed. The girl gripped the coat tighter, leaning closer to the fire. The human sat beside her now, silent but steady, his presence a shield. And though fear had returned with heavy hands, so had something else. Something the girl had thought she would never feel again. Hope that someone would stand beside her when the shadows came knocking. The house was quiet again, but the silence no longer felt safe. The sound of boots outside still echoed in the girl's memory. She sat close to the fire, hugging the coat tighter around her. Her body trembled as if her bones remembered the chains, she whispered again and again. "They'll come back, they always come back." The human sat across from her, his hands resting on his knees. His eyes stared into the flames. Sharp and thoughtful, he knew she was right. The enforcers would not give up easily. A runaway was property in their eyes, and property had to be dragged back, broken, and owned again. But he also knew one thing with certainty. She would not be going back. Finally he spoke, his voice steady. "Listen to me." His words pulled her gaze, her eyes wet and wide. "If they return, I will stand between you and them." Her lips parted, her breath catching. "You don't know what they'll do to you," she whispered. "They'll punish you too. They'll make you disappear like the others." The man leaned forward, his tone firmer. "Then let them try." The firelight flickered across his face, showing the strength in his eyes. For the girl, it was hard to understand. No one had ever chosen her over their own safety. Everyone she met before only looked at her scars, her weakness, and turned away. But here was this man saying he would risk everything. Her heart raced. She whispered, "Why me?" The question burned her throat. "I'm nothing. They told me that every day they made sure I believed it." Her tears came fast. Why fight for nothing? The human's eyes softened, but his voice was fierce. "Because they lied." He leaned closer. "You are not nothing. You are someone who deserves to live, to choose, to be free." The girl's body shook. She tried to believe his words, but the chains of memory held her. "If I stay, I'll bring danger here," she said weakly. "Maybe I should run again. Maybe that's the only way to keep you safe." His hand came down on the table suddenly, the sound sharp in the small room. She jumped eyes wide. But when she looked at him, his anger wasn't at her. It was at the thought of her running back into the night, back into the hands that had scarred her. "You are not running," he said firmly. "Not again." His voice was final, strong, like a wall she could not climb. He stood and walked to the window, staring out at the empty street. His shoulders were tense, his hand resting on the edge of the frame. "I've seen too much taken from people who had no one to stand for them." His voice lowered, heavy with memory. "I will not watch it happen again." The girl stared at him, her tears falling silently. Now she realized he was not just protecting her. He was carrying his own ghosts, his own battles. He understood her pain because somewhere inside, he carried scars too. She whispered, "You don't even know my name." The man turned, his face calm but unshaken. "Then tell me." For a long moment she froze. Her lips trembled. She had almost forgotten her true name. It had been beaten out of her, replaced by numbers, but deep inside the memory flickered. She whispered it soft, as if afraid the walls would punish her for saying it. The human repeated it slowly, carefully, as if locking it into stone. "That's your name," he said firmly. "Not a number, not a mark. That's who you are." Her chest ached. Her tears fell harder, but for the first time, they did not taste only of sorrow. They carried something else. Relief. The man crouched down so his eyes met hers, his voice steady. "And no one will take that away again, not while I live." The fire popped loudly, filling the silence that followed. The girl stared at him, searching for weakness, for a lie, but found none. His words were not empty promises, they were choices that could cost him everything. Yet he made them without hesitation. Her hand reached out slowly, trembling. She gripped the edge of his coat, not pulling him closer, just needing to hold something solid. "I'm scared," she whispered. His eyes softened. His hand rested gently over hers, firm and steady. "So am I," he admitted. "But fear doesn't decide what we do. We do." The girl closed her eyes, his words settling into her heart like embers. For the first time in years, she felt like she wasn't standing alone against the world. For the first time, someone else had chosen her. Outside, faint voices carried in the distance, boots striking the stone. The enforcers had not given up. The danger was real and close. But inside the small house, the human's choice had already been made. He would fight, he would protect, even If it meant standing against all of them, the girl pressed her forehead against his arm, whispering through her tears. "Then I'll stay." The man nodded, his eyes burning with quiet fire. "Good," he said. "Then we face this together." And, in that moment, though fear still clung to the walls and danger waited outside, the girl felt something she thought she would never feel again. Strength. Strength born not from being alone, but from knowing she was no longer forgotten. The night returned heavy and dark. The colony outside the little house was restless. Boots and voices echoed in the distance. The enforcers were still searching. Their shadows stretched across streets. Their questions whispered fear into every corner. Inside the house, the fire burned low, throwing soft light across the walls. The girl sat close to it, her knees pulled up, her arms wrapped around herself. She could still hear the men's voices from earlier, could still feel the weight of chains in her memory. Yet beside her the human sat quietly, sharpening an old knife with slow, steady movements. His calm presence was louder than the fear. Outside hours passed in silence until the girl finally spoke, her voice soft. "They won't stop, will they?" The human shook his head slowly. "No, they never stop. Not on their own." Her chest tightened. She whispered, "Then what do we do? Hide forever?" He looked at her, his eyes steady. "No." His tone was calm, but there was iron in it. "We don't hide. We leave this place, we make our own path." Her eyes widened. "Leave?" The word felt impossible. She had been trapped for so long, the idea of escape felt like a dream. But where? Where would we go? He leaned back, resting the knife on the table. "There are places beyond this colony, places where their reach is weaker, places where people disappear and start again." His gaze met hers. "If you want freedom, that's where we go." The girl trembled. Hope and fear fought inside her chest. She whispered, "Freedom." The word tasted new, almost fragile, like glass that could break at any moment. "Do you really think I could be free?" His answer came without hesitation. "Yes, if you choose it." Her eyes burned with tears. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to see a world beyond cages and marks. For the first time, she dared to imagine it. Walking under a sky without chains, speaking her name aloud without punishment, laughing without fear. The human stood and gathered a small bag, placing inside only what he needed: bread, water, and the knife. He moved with the calm of a man who had already decided his future. He looked at her once more. "If you stay here, they'll find you. If you come with me, you'll have a chance." Her heart raced. She clutched the coat tighter, the same coat that had first given her warmth. She looked at him. This stranger, who had seen her scars, heard her broken voice and still chose to protect her. Her lips trembled, but she whispered, "I'll go." The man nodded once, firm, no surprise in his face, only quiet acceptance. He reached for the door, but before he opened it, he crouched. Down beside her, his hand hovered for a moment, then rested gently on her shoulder. "Stay close to me. No matter what happens, don't let go." She nodded, her small hands gripping the fabric of his sleeve. They stepped out into the cold night. The street was empty, the storm clouds gone, leaving only the sound of dripping, water and the faint glow of broken lamps. Every shadow felt dangerous, every sound carried threat. But together they walked. Twice they had to stop, crouching behind broken crates as enforcers passed. Once a beam of light swept close, nearly catching the girl's face. She buried herself against the human's arm, holding her breath. His steady hand covered hers, grounding her, keeping her from breaking. At last, they reached the edge of the colony where the stone walls crumbled into open land. Beyond lay the unknown, mountains in the distance, forests dark and thick, roads that led to places she had only heard whispered about. The girl stopped, her breath catching. The open space stretched before her like a different world. She whispered, "It's so big." The human looked at the horizon, his jaw firm. "It's just the beginning." Her tears blurred her vision, but they were not the same tears as before. These carried something new, fragile but real, Hope. She turned to him, her voice trembling. I was left with nothing. She clutched the coat, tighter, her heart pounding. But now I have something. The human looked at her, his eyes steady but softer than before. You have yourself, he said quietly, and you're not alone anymore. Her chest ached with the weight of his words. She stepped closer, leaning. Against him for the first time she allowed herself to rest against someone without fear. His arm wrapped around her shoulders, strong and warm. Together they walked into the night, leaving the colony, leaving the chains, leaving the shadows of their old lives. The enforcers would search, the dangers ahead would be many. But in that moment, under the vast sky, the girl felt stronger than she ever had, because she was not nothing. She was someone, and someone had chosen to stand with her, and so began her new life. Not as a number, not as a mark, not as a shadow, but as herself, with a human strength at her side and freedom waiting in the distance.